Welcome to this week's collective conversation. We're so glad that you are joining with us today for this conversation about Sunday's message that was titled, It Wasn't Working Well. With me today, as always, lead pastor Mark Estep. We've got our kids co-coordinator and my wife, Nicole Lee, and our pastoral apprentice extraordinaire. I feel like every time I introduce you, Ryan, I lengthen that title a little bit. But so glad to be with each of you today and having this conversation about something that, Mark, as you introduced Sunday, one of these things that we look at what was normal month and a half, 2 months ago, and realizing that rest is something that we all need, that some in this time feel like maybe you've been getting some more rest than normal. Others like, no, I need it now more than ever. But something that we can all recognize is an important thing, whether you have it or not, in your life. And to kick us off today, I wanted to share a personal story. While I was in college, I had an opportunity to travel with a few other students. And we actually went with a family to their Jewish, to their synagogue. And this was a pretty orthodox group, so they were following a lot more of the rules than some. But went to their Shabbat service on a Friday night, their Sabbath, and then left there and went to their home for what I remember as one of the largest and longest meals I have ever had. This was a meal that there were probably 10 or 12 of us around the table, and I remember being full after what we soon found out was just the appetizer round. They after that brought out like 3 or 4 entrees, and then a whole host of desserts and all that. But was a family with some small kids, but really just wanting to spend time around the table together, eating, fellowshipping, just spending time together. And here I am, probably about 10 years later, looking back, and I don't remember many meals from 10 years ago, but that is one that left an impression on me. Just a beautiful picture of this family sitting around the table, inviting others, and just, I think, a beautiful image of what rest can look like. Just taking time to spend time with others. Mark, one of your points Sunday was about rest is about relationship, and that was so true around that table. And they had done a lot. As I mentioned, this was like an Orthodox family, so they were following a lot of rules and things. And their kitchen was set up with all these kinds of things so that they didn't have to turn off the oven, because that was considered work to them. They would turn it on, they'd program it, and it would be set to automatically turn off once it was over, done cooking, and several other things like that I thought was so interesting. But I think about that and what an impression that made on me 10 years ago, that I still remember this meal, still remember this time, and what rest can look like. And I think that when it's healthy, when it's done, when it's well, that it can leave an impression on us and on others. We've been talking for a few minutes before we recorded, as we often do, and a lot being thrown around, a lot of thoughts. Ryan, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What stuck out to you from Sunday's message?
I think one of the big things is kind of starting from the very end, where Mark mentioned reorient your life to where you find more of rest in your life. Because I think a lot of times that even right now, like I had mentioned a couple of weeks ago, it's been over a month since I've actually been in my job in the actual workplace physically, but I'm doing stuff on my phone and everything else, trying to keep in touch with people. In the first few weeks, you're pretty good. I felt like, I'm pretty good. I'm probably gonna get some rest during this time. And all of a sudden, it's just like you hit a wall. With everything going on now, it seems like a lot of states are lifting a lot of their stuff and people are going to go back to work. And now I feel more anxious than when all this started and there was so much uncertainty. So when it started, you didn't know what was going on, what's going to happen. And even now, we don't know what's going to happen. I feel like in the beginning, I was like, okay, this will be fine. And then now it's like, well, what's it going to be now? When we talk about reorienting your life to where you find more rest, I think if, like we talked about when this first started, how we need to take inventory of what's going on during this. So when we come out of it, we can do better. Something else is that I think we go to a lot of, or we have a lot of negative tendencies that we do, that we don't think about them being negative in the moment that we do it. I'm not talking about like say for instance, for me, I think something negative that I might do would be scroll too long on social media, or even things that you eat or anything like that. I think it's smart to sit down and think when you're doing something, is this negative? Is this having a negative reaction to me? I don't watch the news. I don't watch the news because it makes me way too anxious to sit down and watch a whole hour segment on anything half the time. I'm someone who will look up things and I'll look at the headlines, see what's going on, and then I'm done. I'm usually done for the day, and I'll get back on it the next day and see if there's anything new, because I know what that's going to do to me. But something else I wouldn't even think of being negative until I look and kind of reorient what I'm doing is that if I'm on Facebook and I'm scrolling too long, yeah, there might be something that was nice that someone posted, or that church posted or something that was uplifting. But what all did you have to scroll past to get to that affected you in a negative way? Just depending on how long you search. And there's smart ways to do things. You can look up like the actual church information, or look up their actual profile, look up this person's profile to see if they posted something. You don't have to go scrolling for 2 hours knowing when you get off, you're going to be just as anxious. I think it's smart to reorient your life to what God would have it be and what Jesus says in his word. And you're not going to know really how to reorient that unless you're reading, which I think is something big that I've been able to do since this time. Something good that's come out of this whole quarantine is that I've been able to really dive more into reading my Bible and try to really understand what's going on and try to look through it and study it. And the other times where I was anxious and working all the time and extremely busy, where I wasn't making the time, honestly, like I should. But when you're able to reorient your life, I mean, you're going to have to sit down, look and see what's going wrong, what is affecting you negatively, and what's affecting you positively, and sit down and see, okay, I could probably cut this out, because a lot of times, like, it's normal. It's normal for us. It's normal for people who watch the news. And I'm not dogging on anybody who does that. You know, you do whatever you want. But I think when you watch the news 24/7, and that's something you've always done, that's your normal, that's your normalcy, and that to you it might be normal, but it may also be affecting you negatively, and you don't think about that until you really take an inventory of what you do on a day-to-day basis. If you're feeling like you're not finding rest, and you're feeling like you have a negative attitude, or that you're angry all the time, or that you just feel so down, you know, I think it's smart to look and see, okay, what is there something that I'm doing to make that happen? Because you can only control what you do. You can't control what other people put out or what other people do, but you can control what is in your court. You can control on what you do, what you see, what you look up, what you listen to. And when you reorient your life around what God would have you do and kind of rest that he wants to give you, I think it is a wonderful thing. It really helps. Something else was the other point about rest is about restoration. I think when we really are getting rest and we're trying to find rest, the restoration, which is funny because the word rest is actually in it, is that God wants to restore things in that time that you're trying to rest. He wants to restore, even when you're in surgery and things, they're going to tell you to have some kind of rest for a small amount of time. So either your wounds can heal, your scars can heal, and things like that. I think when you're trying to find rest in God's word and what God would have for your life, he's trying to restore things that were not there or are missing or are broken in that time.
Yeah, that's so good. You know, so much there. And Ryan, that ties in with something that I was thinking about this morning as I was, you know, listening to this message one more time. That this idea that rest isn't about the absence of things, which I think for me was something that I struggled with for so long, was what on my day off, on my Sabbath, what does that need to look like? Well, it needs to not be this, it needs to not be this, it needs to not include this, no phone calls, no emails, don't go to work, those kinds of things. I don't think that is what rest is so much about, as opposed to rest being about presence. Rest being about you being present with our Heavenly Father, present with others in relationship, and just being present in those relationships rather than the absence of those things. And I think that fits in with this idea of not being about restriction, and being about relationship and restoration. And it was just one of the ways that I was able to kind of frame it, and just this morning in thinking about how I view rest. Nicole, what stuck out to you from Sunday?
Yeah, so if we look back at each of the points that was made, it was, rest is not about restriction, rest is about relationship, rest is about restoration, and then the last one was rest is a state of existence for your soul. Looking back through just those points, I felt like you could very easily switch out the word rest for peace, and get the same kind of thing. And I think whenever people think about their lives, we all want to just have a sense of peace in ourselves and in the world around us. Chaos is not fun. Even if you like busy and you like to have things going on, there's a peace in that for you because you're thriving, or whatever it is. So, and so you can't really experience that rest without peace, and you can't really experience the peace without the rest. They work together completely. And so that just was kind of stuck out for me, that you can look at it as being peace and think through that of like, well, what does it look like for me to feel peaceful? You can't restrict yourself into peace. You can't, peace isn't the absence of things. It is the presence of things, like Cameron just said. Peace is about relationship with Jesus. There's a peace in that, restoration and the state of existence for your soul. And I even think about people I know that I look up to that seem to just have the closest relationship with Jesus. And when I think about them, they are peaceful people because of how closely they walk with him, and that you can just feel that when you come around those people. And so when you think about that peace, you have to be able to experience rest. And I think all of that just kind of works hand in hand. And so that was a really eye-opening thing for me to look at that a little differently.
Yeah, I do love that. When we looked at that word uniquely in the way that Jesus uses it in Matthew 11 about rest, that those who come to him, he will give us rest, right? As though that he provides that, and we don't earn that or schedule that or discover it in that type of way. It is a word that is a word about a relief, right? A relief from that which is most troubling to us. And so it is not, again, that's why I love the absence and presence thing. It is not an absence of trouble, and it is not an absence of our world being troubled, or it's not an absence of there being lots of stuff to do. All of those things are very much still there, but it is a relief from all of that allows us to be able to experience an active rest that can still happen in a Sabbath day practice in the course of a week, in which we set aside a day and time. I think that's something that's a great practice to do. I think, there's some Christians who have been, said, that's not something that we have to do, so we don't do it. Well, sure, okay. I don't think that this is a thing that you have to do. But I think that it is a thing that certainly we can do. There's no law against it, and it still is valuable in the ways that that you guys have brought out. And what I love in Cameron's story of being able to experience a Sabbath day with a Jewish family who was Orthodox and trying to follow those teachings around Sabbath in the Old Testament in a modern day way is that I think that those things make such an impression on us because we all want we all want that. Like there is a longing there for that. I don't think that it is a matter of we don't long for lengthy meals around the table with people that we love and care about. Right? I don't think that that's, and you guys know me and my limited TV watching, but this is why I circle back around to my Friends reference over and over again, because I feel like that's also what made that so popular and what also shaped like an entire coffee house movement in the world, right? Was because, people that I like to talk to just sitting around table talking about stuff. And now, granted, that's not a spiritual scene or a spiritual show, right? That's about all those things. But what it does for sure connect with is that there is a longing of the soul to experience those types of moments. Um, Whether or not we are disciplined enough for sure to create space for some of that is another question or conversation. But yeah, I think, man, we all long for that, right? We all want that, and there was a sense that it wasn't working well for us before this time.
Yeah, that's good. I love this framework of thinking about rest and relief, because one of the things I was thinking about when we were talking, about rest is that it was created for us, but I think we focus a lot as Christians on the Sabbath, the rest in a week span, but I believe that there should be rest in every day. There should be rest in a week, and there should be rest in a season or in a year, and those look different. But when we think about them as relief from the day means adding in just a little bit of margin, a little bit of time for relationship, for presence, and for that. Relief in a week is much like we've talked about, and relief in a year is being able to step away, maybe even physically, although that's not very easy in this time frame. Hopefully hopefully soon we'll be able to travel and to do that and to experience rest. And and for most people, that time of rest, that time of relief, when it looks like vacation, is done with those that we want to be around. It's done with family or with friends. That provides that sense of relief from the day to day and the week to week, to help us to refocus. And yeah, it's great being absent from the norm. It's about the presence of where we are and who we're with in that time. So
Yeah.
that was good.
No, you're absolutely right. This idea of absence and presence is really one of the most powerful ways, I think, of thinking about rest in this way, because Jesus really is making the point that in that scene in Matthew 12 that we looked at in that way, where he talks about there being something greater than the temple that is here. And he's talking about himself, right? And so it is all about presence in that way. And that a big part of his point is that there is not rest apart from his presence, right? So that is the come to me, I am present, right? I've come to be present for you. I am your very present help in time of need, right? And so that's the crux of this entire thing. Really is Jesus. I'm present. You can come to me, be present with me, and I give you rest. And then the more that you realize my presence and rest in my presence, the more you find rest, right? And so I don't know. I feel like I'm learning so much in this, looking through this passage myself, and in this conversation about all of those things. I really do. It's the presence of Jesus that gives us rest, the relief from the trouble. And the more we lean into that, the more we we find additional rest and additional rest continuously. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so good. I mean, you mentioned friends in the coffee shop, and I was thinking yesterday, this longing that I have to just, and I don't go to coffee shops all that often to work, but just the longing to go meet somebody for coffee and just sit there and talk, maybe 5 feet apart, rather than a full 6. But,
Yes.
yeah, definitely. I mean, this idea, this thing about rest, is so important for us. And one of our other apprentices mentioned in the online chat on Sunday, that these people around Jesus were so focused on the place as where the presence of God was, which is how it had been for centuries and centuries. But what they were missing was the fact that rather than just in this place, was this spirit that only one person in the whole world could actually go into. The high priest on one day out of the year could go into the Holy of Holies. Meanwhile, Jesus, who is God in human form, was standing right there amongst them, and they were, missing out on all of this, just missing out on the presence of who was with them. And I think that is something too that I think often we miss out on Jesus's presence. I think often we focus more on where we are than who we're with. And I think about like my family has gone to the same beach summer after summer for years, and there's something special about being there because it ties in with the memories of where growing up, going there, and all of that. But it's not about the location; it's about the people. It's about the relationship. And I think it's so easy to think of, oh, this is almost a sacred space, because we're here where, we've grown up and done all this, but it's not about the location. It's about the relationship and those around us. Yeah,
man, what some of this makes me think about as well in this absence of presence, that how much we think to ourselves at times, if I can get away from what's bothering me, then I'll have some rest, right?
Yeah.
Like if I can be absent from whoever it is or whatever it is, then I'll be fine, right? But what if I can't be? What if or it's going to be way too long for me for that to be able to actually become reality? And I do think, man, a part of the beauty, like the power of rest in this way, is sometimes it's finding it being present where we are, right? I mean, sometimes it's not, I just have to try to be absent from, but it is, embracing the presence of Jesus with me where I am and me being present in that right here, right now. And so not me running even from the conflict or problems or whatever in life. I'm like, man, if I can run away from it, but the power rests right where I am, right? That's even that you prepare a table for me in the presence of my enemies kind of thing. And to your point, a big part of what people were struggling with for sure in Jesus' day was, okay, there's a place and there's a time. And whoa, I have no idea what just happened there, but
we lost you.
I was completely kicked off and then brought back. So I'm not sure where I was cut off at, but
if
which is okay. So part of what I was saying, we could just dive back into this. Well, part of what I was saying with what was so good along the lines of you talking about presence and absence again was the Old Testament awareness, or the awareness around rest at Jesus' point in time. Everything was about place and date, right? Or place and time. Place being temple, time being Sabbath, and presence was only really something that you gave much thought to? Not for everyone, but those were that was the occasion, right, in which you could really think about that. And the power of Jesus was that when he says something greater than temple is here, I am heaven touching earth. I am rest in the middle of chaos. I am all of that. And so, veil being torn in temple, presence of God being with us all. It's so much more powerful than we realize in a practical way, right? Of us being able to experience that presence. We don't have to wait for us to get absent from everything else to get to that. That's the powerful thing in all of that. I don't know if any of that made sense, especially I lost a little bit of track of where I started all this before. I just got completely kicked off Zoom by Zoom for some reason. They hate me today. So sorry.
No, that's good. That's good. Anybody have anything else before we wrap up?
I did think of one thing while we were talking through all of this, and I feel like at the end of this message, I just had this feeling of just like, okay, so what now for me? What does processing all of this, thinking about the state that we have been in, for the past month at least, I think it's so important not to just dismiss everything that we've gone through and rush back into all the busy and the crazy. And so trying to figure out, where has God been trying to give me relief? What things have I been doing that were not helpful, that were negative even before quarantine or, viruses or any of those things? So what am I going to take forward from this? What do I need to do to have my soul be in a state of rest? And so I just would encourage people to kind of wrestle through that. Look at how your lives are right now without all of the extra things, and figure out where Jesus has adjusted things for you for the better, and to move towards that, even if everything goes back to normal, whatever that is. And to just figure that out, because we can stay in a state of rest for those people who maybe this has been a time that they've realized, like, man, this has been kind of great, for your well-being, maybe physically, emotionally, whatever. It might be easier to see to run to that, stay in that peace and that rest, and figure out what Jesus has been adjusting for you, because we know he does use things for good, even if the things aren't good. So even though all of this craziness is not good, we would be doing a disservice if we didn't let him and change what we've been the pace we've been moving at.
Yeah, that's really good. And I think definitely true for all of us, whether this has been a season where you find yourself with more rest, ways that you can continue that and go ahead and kind of thinking through that now, or maybe this is a season that you're working yourself to death and you think, what can this look like moving forward as this season changes? What changes can you make in ways to have some more moments of rest and have more of that state of existence of rest for your soul? That's good. That's good. Well, Mark, what's anything you want to share about what's coming up this weekend and
so I'm excited. We're obviously progressing toward an eventual end to this time. We are inevitably getting closer to all of the reopening things, and we continue to think through that and pray through that. And but I do have something for sure, as we'll be online again this weekend coming up, that I'm really excited about sharing with everyone. That will be a very unique and different thing from what we have done before, but it will add to this conversation significantly around rest and around some things that we're learning in this time, and particularly around resilience. And so I'm really excited about it. I'll have a special guest involved in part of this that everybody will, I think, really want to be a part of hearing the story and some stuff that's really helpful. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it a lot. I am going to take notes myself on this of what we're about to do. So yeah.
Well, that was a teaser. So definitely want to make sure to plan to be a part of one of those online gatherings Sunday at 9:30, 11:15 in the morning, or 7 p.m. And yes, as Mark said, we are looking toward and working toward being able to have physical gatherings again soon when it's safe, smart, and healthy. And we're excited about that. We miss you. We're praying for you, and we hope to see you soon. But this Sunday, we'll see you online.